When a woman takes a pharmaceutical, she is fundamentally saying no to her body. She is fundamentally saying, what you're doing is not aligned with what I want. Well, you are your body. That is you. It is you telling you about you. And we split and triangulate against ourselves all the time. Every time as women, we make what I call the poor bargain, right? Anytime you have that little no inside and you ignore it, right? You go on a first date and you're like, this is not for me. I don't know why. He looks good on paper. He's hot sitting across from me. And just like, I just have this feeling. Every time we ignore that, we make the poor bargain and we split against ourselves and we inspire all sorts of drama. Okay. And we do this with the body as well.
2, 1, 0.
Hello and welcome to Stellar Life Podcast. This is your host, Orion. Thank you so much for being here. I have with me a very special guest. She is beautiful from the inside out. She's very interesting. She's polarizing. She's fantastic. Her name is Dr. Kelly Brogan. Kelly Brogan is a holistic psychiatrist, author of the New York Times bestselling book, A Mind of Your Own. Own Yourself, the children's book, A Time for Rain, and co-editor of the landmark textbook, Integrative Therapies for Depression. Kelly is the founder of the online healing program Vital Mind Reset and the membership community Vital Life Project, and the host of Reclamation Radio podcast. In this very, very interesting episode, we talked about her being a trailblazer and the shift that she's been through her life from being a traditional psychiatrist prescribing antidepressant to now helping people get off of antidepressant and reclaiming their body. Her whole teaching is around reclamation of your mind, body, and soul as a woman. We talked about dealing with criticism, judging others, and going deep into healing your own wounds. And now, without further ado, on to the show. Hi, Kelly, and welcome to Stellar Life Podcast. It's an honor and a pleasure having you here. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh, and the pleasure is all mine. Thank you.
Before we begin, maybe you can share a little bit about your life story and your passion.
That could take up the whole session. Let's see. So I guess I have really come to appreciate my journey, which at many points has appeared to be like a dumpster fire of a life path, with many, many dark nights of the soul, many shed identities, many experiences of really recognizing that I had it all wrong, and also learning to have compassion for the part of me that thought that I had it all right. So in looking at the arc of my process and my journey, I now see it really as like a pretty typical heroine's journey, right? Like a pretty typical archetypal individuation process. And the sacrifices of identity that I have been asked to make are all in service of my coming, more and more into my actualized sense of self. But I have been a conventional doctor, actually a psychiatrist, and total card-carrying cult member who believed that pharmaceuticals were the answer to every human challenge. I have been somebody who was probably accurately described as like a man-hating feminist. And I have, played very conservative roles in my public appearance where I made sure to curate exactly the aspects of my, intellectual self and professional self, and to bury all of the rest that might otherwise garner me any kind of criticism. And I have flipped to the other poles. In fact, no pun intended, as pole dancing itself has been a very instrumental spiritual transformational practice for me in my more recent years. So as I've traveled my path, which has involved a lot of relational challenges, loss, and self-reinvention, I guess. I'm also a mother of 2 teenage girls, and that has been one of the deeper opportunities I've encountered in this lifetime to understand the anatomy of human intimacy and to shed a lot of covert control mechanisms that I had really operating behind the scenes. But as I have, moved through these different portals, I've come to see that in the women that I work with, I, watch them moving through the same exact, let's call them opportunities. And so I've come to study, like what is it that makes you interested in this self-initiatory process? What is it that holds you through the confusion and the pain of identity dissolution? Like, what is it that prepares you to rest in the uncertainty of knowing that you're no longer who you were, but not yet knowing who it is that you will become, right? So these liminal spaces. And so I've come to look at it as like a hierarchy of I guess engagement. And I am a big believer in self-initiation starting with self-care. And so, I developed a program called Vital Mind Reset that is essentially the health protocol that I used myself to resolve. Initially, the intention was to resolve my diagnosis of Hashimoto's thyroiditis postpartum, my first pregnancy, and then it turned into this program thousands of people have done. And I've had the privilege of witnessing these like absolutely history making, sometimes literally, medical outcomes of people shedding, diagnoses and medications, and really that sick identity, that sense that something's actually very broken about
Right.
me, right? That I believe most of us, I think especially women, carry. And it's
I don't carry that. Of course I
but right? Like you can spray all sorts of potpourri in the room and the stink of that will permeate. So to get at the transformation of that disempowerment, I feel I have, to some extent provided a meaningful solution to that. But what I found is that, you can get your health in check. You can feel like somebody's finally home in your body and like your nervous system is better regulated. And if your relationships are still patterned by your childhood traumas, you will continue to experience projection. And what that looks like is that you will idealize and vilify those that you interact with. Could be your lover, could be your husband, could be your mother, could be your child, could be your employee or your boss. And you will have the same patterns of struggle in your relationship that ultimately may cycle you back into the doctor's office kind of identity. And so I found that there was a whole nother leg of the journey, to embark upon once my Hashimoto's was in remission and I didn't have a single health symptom for 15 plus years. I still had a lot of self-discovery to explore. And so that is the subject matter of my second program called Reclaimed and the associated book that's been a bit, I guess, like hot to handle. And I don't think it's going to shock anyone in your audience from what I've learned about you. There's, some, I guess, counter narrative kinds of perspectives about what women can do today to take full responsibility, for our experience and to resolve the continued thread of disempowered victim consciousness that fuels a lot of our resentment, our disappointment, our bitterness, and really worst of all, this feeling, they call it functional freeze in neurobiology, but this feeling of living behind a glass wall, and being in that automated, to-do list, anchored perception. And we just feel and know that there's more for us here, the sensuality, the fulfillment, the enthusiasm, the aliveness that we incarnated to embody. When you don't have a relationship to that, it will hurt and you will suffer. And I do believe it's by design. It's meant to be that way as an invitation, back to the path.
There's so much in what you said, and I can go in so many directions. I'm going to go a little bit backwards. Let's talk about your awakening from traditional psychiatrist prescribing pills to the more, I guess, awakened conspiracy theorist, not conspiracy theorist you are today. So how did you do that, and how did you find the courage to stand with your truth the way you do it today?
So I I imagine many would say something similar, because when you are operating from your wound as a woman, it can often be celebrated by society. You can experience many rewards. There can be a lot of reinforcement. And I am, one of the hallmark examples of that phenomenon. So what I mean by that is that, my mom is Italian, and so I am second generation. She and my dad raised me to really focus my attention and energy on my performance, my achievement, and my success. I was specifically encouraged to be a self-sufficient woman who's got herself right, financially and otherwise. And I was motivated extrinsically. Okay, so I was motivated by reward and punishment around my grades and my academic achievement. And it worked. I was 4.0 till the last test I took. And I, went to, pedigreed clinician and all of the rest. Pulsing beneath that performance is a fundamental self-rejection in my opinion, of my feminine nature, my feminine essence, and the worth and value that I have as a woman for simply waking up in the fucking morning. Okay. So for simply being, doing nothing for anyone, caretaking no one, and making myself useful in no way. So I am just actually still beginning to access this many years in the thawing process of my own system. And I'm not alone, because this is it's the ideology of, feminist values that have actually just allowed for the colonization of masculine values, right? So we have, as women, come to understand that, of course, I think subconsciously we are afraid of men. Biologically, we are vulnerable. That is an indisputable fact. And so we have developed this means of compensating for the white noise of fear that we walk around with, which is to say, I see you, man, over there, right? Like strong and safe. And I want that. So I'm going to copy you. It's like dressing up like a monster on Halloween, right? And laughing about it. And the truth is that the fulfillment that lies at the end of that road, not that there's an end, it actually doesn't ever touch what it is that we long for as women, right? So I'm not actually looking for, I discovered, and as a career activist in the medical freedom world, I'm not actually looking for freedom, as it turns out, right? So like I got to one of the summits, let's say, in these past years as a single woman, where I have the accolades and achievements and the New York Times bestseller and the 7-figure business, and I'm totally self-sufficient. I take care of my kids entirely on my own. And the feeling I have is like, I want to look down the mountain and be like, ladies, it's not fucking up here. Like turn around and go back. Right. And so I've come to understand that the choices that I made to prioritize my career over my role and other choices, because these are choices, thanks to feminism, to become a wife and to become a mother. The choice that I made to prioritize my career and to gaslight myself around the possibility that I could have it all, right? And be both a mother and a career woman, or maybe the trifecta of a wife, mother, and career woman, are revealed to me, only more recently on my path. So, when I engaged in my renegade activist, angry bitch moment of my career, it certainly looked like I was courageous and brave.
I wonder what you looked like when you were that renegade angry.
Oh, you can search me up on YouTube and go scroll back to 2013 and you'll see, I have like blown out barrel curls. I don't know, this is my opinion about my own appearance. Like I look tired. Like there's like a heaviness, almost like a sadness around my eyes. And actually I can see it in myself until I actually left my my second marriage in 2021. And the the deep work that catalyzed in me, I literally look like a different person. But regardless, I sound
You found yourself, you found what makes you happy, you connected more to your body. What is it? What's the shift?
I don't even really like value happiness. I wouldn't say that that's something I'm like after. I am interested in aliveness. So for me, the worst feeling is that disconnection of like the robot life, right? That disconnection that, I'm like with my daughters and I feel like I should be feeling something. And so in these past years, the tools that I have curated have chiefly been in service of unlocking vital force energy from beneath my shame. So I went like headfirst into every uncomfortable belief that I had about myself and other women. So I began to use my relationship to other women, sometimes anonymous women out there, sometimes women in my life, of course, my mother. And I worked this process, of identifying all of the places that I have rejected and projected aspects of myself. And what I found when I reclaimed them.
Wow, that's amazing.
I mean, it's actually pretty simple, right? So I'm a very pragmatic. I'm a New Yorker, so I'm a very pragmatic girly, and I like it to be simple. So my approach is predicated on like really simple, accessible practices, and one I call the villain crown, right? So anytime I feel judged, by somebody else, and sometimes when you're in my position and you're as a pedigreed doctor posting videos of yourself pole dancing in a bikini, okay, there is confusion, there is disgust, there is frustration, there's anger, there are often threats, right? So like I invited all of this. Yeah, this was back in like probably 2022. And I invited this and I saw the opportunity because I've experienced pushback over my career as an activist for a decade, right? But it never bothered me. It literally never bothered me. I mean, I was like on the disinformation dozen list in 2020, and I actually found it kind of funny. Like it never has bothered me that people push back against my perspectives on, pharmaceuticals, holistic medicine. It never, ever, ever got to me, and that included death threats.
Wow,
this did. And I saw this fork in the road of, I had the option to defend myself and go into my Instagram comments and litigate my position, which I happen to be very good at doing, or to, as I call it, enter through the upset, right? And to read a comment where somebody said, you're a reckless narcissist who's endangering the women you purport to help. And why don't you just stay in your lane and continue doing like what everybody's here to hear you talk about, which is not pole dancing or whatever. Right. So I could read that. Let's say I feel this somatic sequence. Like I feel a rush of energy, like a clench in my chest and then a rush of energy up my throat. And normally I would avoid any associated feelings of shame and what's beneath that shame by acting, right? So by meaning like springing into action, right? So I would like, pen the response, let's say. And in this case, in entering through the upset, I am committed. I call it self-husbanding. I'm committed to being the best husband to myself, who creates the conditions for me to feel attended to, for me to feel a sacred presence, for me to feel total radical approval and curiosity. So I invoke that energy. You could call it witness consciousness, right? There's nothing new being invented here. And for me, this framework really helps.
It doesn't matter if it's new or not new. It's the way you frame it that is new, and it's landing in a different way for me.
Yeah, it just makes it like I'm a visual person. So like I'll imagine, this masculine energy showing up inside of me, right? And it's like, hey, baby, what's going on? I see you. Right. And so like that energy is watching what? It's watching this clench. It's watching these rushes. It's just watching. I see that.
Yes.
I see that. But it's storyless. It's not about, hey, and then he did this and then she did that. It's not that. Okay. So first that, just for like 90 seconds, literally. If you commit to that every single time, you'll notice the challenge is you have committing to that, right? So I will, and this is my work, right? So like I will often prefer in a moment of upset to voice note a girlfriend or to write an email or to send a text, right? To diffuse that perceived
pressure.
threat of energy. And so the meta commitment that you're making here now is I am here. This is my priority. You are my number one, no matter what is happening. Right. So like, you go to a bathroom and lock the door, you find 90 seconds. That's all it takes to simply be with. You're not fixing anything, you're attending to. Okay. And then after that, you might, what I call try on the villain crown, right? So you might consider the possibility of allowing somebody who's judging you to be allowed to be right, right? Maybe they're right that I am, let's say, a reckless narcissist or whatever it is, a salacious. Maybe they're right that I'm having this horribly embarrassing. It's not though, because it's only terrible. Literally, I will only feel something if there is already a part of me that believes that I'm embarrassing myself, that I'm womaning wrong, that I've made a big mistake. And I'm telling you this because I have been criticized my entire career. I'm a very polarizing figure, controversial figure, and I have given zero about it. And then there are times where I give a lot of about it and it hurts so much. And I feel, wow, like maybe I should just give up because I not only up, but I up so publicly that everybody saw and I can't undo it. Right. So it's like existential. It's that brokenness. It still somehow has a flavor, a thread in there, right? So if I allow this to be true, then I invite the part of me that agrees to the table and I express curiosity and interest, right? So what if it is, maybe it's true, maybe this person is right. And maybe I can just hold that for a minute, just in the privacy of my own home with myself, right? So I'm just going to hold that possibility. And then the flip of it is whenever I feel judgmental of somebody else, I consider the possibility that even in the judgment of them, I am exhibiting exactly the same thing that I am accusing them of exhibiting. And that is another time that I put on that villain crown and I allow myself, I practice being bad and wrong, right? Because, we didn't get so much into the origin story of my activist career, which can be summarized by the fact that I was diagnosed postpartum with my first health condition on a routine physical, which is called Hashimoto's thyroiditis. And, I had some brain fog, but it was like chalked off to.
Yeah, I had postpartum depression too. And I didn't even know I had it just later on.
Okay, well, I don't use that term or like those diagnoses, and especially for this reason, because what we call Hashimoto's or hypothyroid, for example, what we call even postpartum bipolar or postpartum mania, often these so a psychiatric diagnosis has actually no validity, right? Like there's no tests, there's no objective assessment, you're not getting a spinal tap, nobody's analyzing nothing. It's essentially like a quiz that you take. And if you meet the criteria, then you get a diagnosis. And by the way, good luck shedding that diagnosis outside of, my or related containers, because you'll probably have it for life. Like it will always mar your record, right? And the truth is that there are so many physiologic imbalances, right? So I'm describing one of them, which is thyroid. We could call it dysfunction, but I don't believe that the body makes mistakes. So let's call it imbalance. Thyroid imbalance has literally the same diagnostic criteria as depression, right?
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Right. So just think about it, right? Like low energy, poor concentration, decreased mood, flat mood, sleep disturbance. It's like literally point per point per point. And the nuances are often that women get diagnosed postpartum with, bipolar or mania or even postpartum psychosis. And when you look at these autoimmune conditions, the thyroiditis type, you have this window. I was in my skinny jeans 3 weeks postpartum.
Wow.
Okay. That is not normative.
No.
And that was because I was in this flare of reactivity and my thyroid tissue was literally being hyperstimulated by my own body. And then there was enough thyroid tissue destruction that I developed the symptoms of low thyroid over time. This is very common. I treated this in my practice for 10 years. It's so common. And it doesn't mean that your body is doing anything wrong. In fact, this was the invitation for me, because your thyroid's your fifth chakra, right? So it's the invitation to speak your voice, right? To make your rhetorical mark on your own life. And when I was diagnosed, as much as I had been committed to the allopathic model, interestingly, I didn't want to take a prescription for the rest of my life. And so it's fine for me to prescribe to all of my patients, but I didn't want to do that. And you could call it sacred laziness. Like, I don't know. I just wasn't down to like walk a prescription to CVS every month for the rest of my life. And so I actually went to a naturopath. I changed my diet. And again, I mentioned I'm Italian American. Cheese and bread was like literally my whole diet. And I, you see candy and McDonald's and all the things. I'd never heard of anything, like meditating or detox. Like I never took supplements, none of that. So all that I did in the initial stages was change my diet. And I watched in black and white my antibodies go from the high 2000s and my TSH of 20 normalize. And there was no explanation for this in the conventional model, which is very common, right? These outliers of medical cures are treated like anomalies instead of being investigated. Well, I investigated this. I wanted to know how the hell that happened. And I found that there's a huge amount of literature around the role of these lifestyle changes and specifically, gut-brain physiology and nutritional influence. And I had never heard of any of it. In fact, I was taught to dismiss and deride any lifestyle choices beyond like, oh, if you have diabetes, don't drink like a big gulp Slurpee from 7-Eleven. And, if you have heart disease, like go light on the salt. Like that was the extent of my nutrition education in my, 4-year Ivy League training. And I put this condition into remission and I was enraged, like absolutely livid. Okay. So this is where I'm circling back to my woundology because I went from idealizing this system that ultimately was parentified, the medical system, to vilifying it. I just flipped to the other side. And now I devoted 10 years of my life to fighting this system. I published a book with an exploding pharmaceutical pill on the cover. I dedicated myself to taking every single woman I ever met off of these meds, whether it was birth control or antidepressants or whatever.
Do you think there is a percentage of the population, if any, that does need those pills, or nobody should ever touch them?
I don't like to speak in like such black and white terms because I used to do it all the time. And my answer would absolutely have been no. Why? Because your body doesn't make mistakes. And until you can understand the language that your body is speaking, which is an invitation to change something about your perception of your reality, which often requires changing some aspect of your reality, from your diet to your marriage, to your place of employment, or to your toxic home, right? Until you can respond to the very specific question that your illness is asking you, only you can answer this. There's no expert or guru that you will ever find who can answer that question. Now, can people open your mind to possibilities? Can they inspire you? Can they, jog your intuition into, some sort of activation? Absolutely. And in the end, it's your question to answer. So you might as well get on your own damn team and stop triangulating against your body. When a woman takes a pharmaceutical, she is fundamentally saying no to her body. She is fundamentally saying, what you're doing is not aligned with what I want. Well, you are your body. That is you. It is you telling you about you. And we split and triangulate against ourselves all the time. Every time as women, we make what I call the poor bargain, right? Anytime you have that little no inside and you ignore it, right? You go on a first date and you're like, this is not for me. I don't know why. He looks good on paper. He's hot sitting across from me. And just like, I just have this feeling. Every time we ignore that, we make the poor bargain and we split against ourselves and we inspire all sorts of drama. Okay. And we do this with the body as well. And so it's not to say that one is better or one is worse. Your experience of your body, your experience of your relationships is how you are meeting your needs, right? So if one of the deepest needs we have as women is for safety, not freedom, safety, right? Then it may be the case that having a relationship with a parentified authority called a doctor who knows better than you and who can punish you and reward you, right? It's like a covert subdom relationship that nobody's talking about, but that's essentially what's happening. Okay. It's like, marginally consented and whatever. So that may actually be how you meet your needs for attention, for care, and also how you meet your needs for boundaries, right? Because when you have a chronic illness, you don't have to learn to say no. Your illness says it for you, right? You don't want to go out to dinner with somebody. Oh, I have a migraine, right? Oh, I'm in an episode or whatever. So it's the installment of a lot of need meeting strategies. Of course, they're subconscious usually. So it's not that this is a spiritual meritocracy. And that's why you won't hear me really use the word like awakening or whatever, because now it's so infused with like one is good and the other is bad. Sheep who are asleep are bad, and people who are awakened and enlightened, well, I'm certainly, I have not reached a destination, and it's a process. So what makes sense at one point in your journey may at another point be just like irrelevant, right? So in my household, we don't work with pharmaceuticals. It's like not relevant. We don't talk about it. It's not even a thing. If somebody has a headache, it's not like we're like, all right, there's no way I'm taking an Advil. It's just literally not a thing. It's not spoken of, right? And so that is, to me, more the maturational model, right? Where you get to this place where you don't need to make the choices that you are not aligned with, bad and wrong, in order to honor, your true alignment. Because when you're in that, what I call the erotic caress of the enemy, you have to make your ex bad and wrong. You have to make that friend that you've ended the relationship bad and wrong. You have to make your kids bad and wrong. You have to make your job. You have to make the government bad and wrong in order to feel yourself, in order to find yourself in polarity. And it's just a maturational stage, right? When you get into these more adult territories, you stand in your own shoes, you focus on the life that's in front of you, and the fact that you are in control designing the whole damn thing. So your whole system.
Life is so much more interesting when you're in polarity and when you're better than anybody else.
I know.
When you're like the awakened and they're the sheep and you know everything and they don't. You're the smartest person in the room. It's like, it's way more interesting. Like what I like. Yeah, what they represent is exactly in me. It does make me feel so great. But yes, it's a matter of matureness, which I'm still very much a child. Keep telling people I'm 27 every year. So, we keep doing that. Like I think just being human, we keep judging, and even when we get into those points of, yeah, I understand that they are my reflection and they are my shadow, and I need to embrace them. It's still like super super hard to handle. How do you handle?
It is until you start to experience the yield. Like, why the hell would you do that? Because then you're just engaging in like, oh, this is what a good person does, right? They like embrace their enemy, kind of a thing. And you're still in the trap.
It's a trap within a trap within a trap within a trap. It never ends.
Exactly. So you've got to, we are easily conditioned creatures, right? So you've got to experience the reward in order to develop the intrinsic motivation to be curious about that which you judge, right? So, I used to judge like slutty women, right? So women who were very objectifying of their own sexuality, who like wore inappropriate clothing, probably would include what I'm like literally wearing right now, who were who didn't know when the right time to be
I love what you're wearing right now, by the way. It's so beautiful. It's so pretty.
But I absolutely, I just had a very narrow definition of how a woman could be respected. Yes. Right. And I thought that respect for a woman was very important. I didn't realize that most of us as women who have a feminine essence actually want to be cherished far more than we want to be respected. Nonetheless, I might, I have a friend who is a pole teacher for me, let's say, for a period of time. And I would have seen her, the way she dresses, the way she moves, the way she lives and conducts her life, the way she shows up on social media. And I wouldn't have like overtly been like a bitch, but I would have written her off. Like actually worse than judging would be like a dismissive, dehumanizing.
I'm better than you.
Yeah. Positioning of myself as superior and like, oh, poor girl. Like she could never have what I have going on. Like, I don't know exactly what it would sound like, but something like that. And I wouldn't have found any real value or potential connection through any dynamic or friendship or relationship with such a person. Right. And in the process of opening myself to such a connection, right? So I hired her as a teacher, like from the very first experience that I had with her, I was in her home with her pole and she said, okay, she's like literally the loveliest human. She's so kind, so warm, so down to earth. Okay. And she said, okay, I'm going to put some music on and I just want you to walk around the pole to the music. Right? Like let the music inspire your movement around the pole, but you're not like dancing, you're not doing choreo, you're just literally walking around the pole. And if I could have pressed the eject button on my existence in that moment, I would have done it. If I could have like run out the door, like immolated into a pile of ash, I would have done it. I was so overwhelmed and the shame that gripped me. I had the same experience when I started taking singing lessons. The shame. Oh my God. And I realized I'm outside of my zone of mastery, my zone of genius, and I don't know how to do this perfectly. Not that I'm a perfectionist, because I'm really not. I don't know how to do this in a way that will inspire approval. Okay. And moving through those few minutes was an initiation. It truly, truly was. And what opened up to me and for me, I mean, it brings tears to my eyes. Through that journey that started that day was life-changing for me. Why? Because I had so much shame holding these sensual, playful, erotic parts of me, these creative dimensions of me hostage. And I could have lived my entire life just being a good girl, and it would have been a good life, okay, on paper. And the gifts that came through my opening to the possibility that I have even just a little flavor, a little taste of what this woman has coursing through her body. Because to this day, like I watch this woman dance and I'm like, you are another species from me. And it's true and not true, right? Because like when I move, when I dance, I feel a little bit of her in me. And that's why, we were talking before we started, I collected all these women who've inspired me I have like an online collection called Faces of Fierce Femininity with like Jaya and Mama Gina and Sheila Kelly and all these women. And then I gathered as many as I could in person. It ended up being 10 other women in Miami last year for this event I did called Audacious Embodiment.
Nice. I don't know why I teared up when you were talking. Maybe because I can totally resonate with that. I think every woman that is listening to this can relate. This is
we do this for each other as women. We really can. I call it holding out a hand in the dark, and these women did that for me. And I wouldn't have ever even known I was walking in the dark, let alone felt her hand, if I was arrested in my superiority and my judgment, right? So that being neutralized has afforded me access to my own flavors. It's also why I love pole, because as somebody who's like still a beginner years later, you can access so many different dimensions. You can access like ratchet, raunchy, like pleather, thigh high boots, low flow, to trap music. You can access, I was a ballerina in my earlier life. You can access, you can wear a leotard and climb up that pole and spin around to classical music. You can have something flowy and sweet and feminine. You can access so many different flavors. I did a whole podcast about this on my own show called like the spiritual lessons that I have enjoyed because of pole dancing. And I would not have even touched that realm if I stopped at those women are sluts. Or whatever. Like, it wouldn't have ever sounded that stupid in my mind, but that's essentially like the distillation, right? Like, those women are lost. I actually think that's a better, more accurate summary. Like, oh, those women are lost. They must be really damaged, right? Relative to me. Meanwhile, one of my earliest experiences with the practices I teach in my book and program and stuff, was when I received an email from somebody that I love very much. And, of course, it was in the context of great contention. And the email said, "You are a deeply injured soul who is incapable of love." And when I got this, it was so much a gut punch, because it was, again, we talked about this earlier, that same core belief that I am broken, damaged goods. Like, I'm actually so f***ed up that if I can't succeed in hiding that successfully from people for the rest of my life, like, I'm actually in moral danger, right? So I, at that point, had already been working on these practices, and I was like, oh, this is a big one, right? So my goal for women is to get to the place where you know how to alchemize literally anything that comes at you. So something like that comes at you, and there's a little part of you that's like, oh, let's go, right? So I tried that on. I entered through the upset for my, minute, 2 minutes, and then I tried that shit on. And what I found was the part of me that absolutely agrees. I didn't need anyone to say that to me. I already felt that and believed that, right? So the part of me that absolutely is like, you are a deeply injured soul. Wow. Okay. And that I'm incapable of love. Well, yeah, at that point, I only knew control, micromanagement, and strategy and manipulation. And I was really good at it, which is why I've had long-term relationships my entire adult life. Right. So that I didn't know what intimacy truly was and secure attachment. Yeah, that was true too. Well, look at that. What's for lunch? Right. So it's like the whole thing just gets alchemized. And then the part of me that was holding those beliefs feels seen and included, right? Feels finally connected. And these parts always come bearing creative gifts. They always do. And so what I mean by that is, like, you'll get an impulse within a day, sometimes 10 minutes, that is a creative expression, right? You'll want to write a poem. You'll want to put on music and dance. You'll want to, find a mentor or coach to learn more about something. You'll want to paint a picture. And this is the creative energy that many women are far more expressed in than those of us who've been in the entrepreneurial realm, or let alone, doctors, lawyers, all this kind of tracks that are so masculinizing and disconnecting. But this is it's our essence, right? Is creative. We come from sex, literally, and it's a part of our vital force. It's a part of our extension into the erotic artistry of our lived life, our daily life, right? Like, this opportunity we have to make love to life and not wait for the perfect partner to ravish us, right? So it's a part of that reclamation, is just taking every single opportunity to go in when you would normally stay focused outward.
Yeah, I think that in my relationship, like, one of the things that I guess holding the relationship, regardless of everything we've been through, we love each other very much, but when you own your part in the relationship, and you have the understanding that, everything, like you said, is a reflection of you, and you just own your own happiness. You don't need somebody else to fulfill you. And if I get really upset, I just take a moment to, I don't know, pray, meditate, go out for a walk. I'm in Israel now, so I don't have a pole dancing studio yet. And the more you talk about pole, the more I'm just like, I want it. You talked about boots. I'm like, oh, my beautiful, beautiful, very, very tall, shiny blue boots are in Miami. Ah. But yeah, those things, that self-care, that self-reflection is so important, because that's what moves all the relationship. I mean, we live in a movie where we are the main character, and everybody just kind of like, even our kids, even our partner, it just they kind of like circle around us. We're the sun, they circle around us and they move with us. And like Wayne Dyer said, when you change, the world around you change, all the players change, they evolve, we jump timelines. It's very interesting. I love that. What's your thought about timelines and quantum fields and all that? Are you into that?
No,
No.
I'm not into any of that. No, I have too many like really erudite academic genius colleagues who have debunked so many things that I formerly believed, including basically all of like quantum physics. Right? Like I have actually a show on my own podcast with Dr. Steve Young, who's a physicist, a nuclear physicist actually, and he talks about he wrote a book called Fool's Wisdom, and it's like all about like the deception and lies that we've been told about everything from the atom to the solar system to nuclear weapons, to this idea of quantum anything. So I actually find that it can be a real, so much of the new age can be a real narcotic. I don't know how else to put it. And I'm trained in Kundalini yoga. And so it's not to throw out all of these beautiful ancient practices that have extraordinary power, but it's to say that we are attracted to these teachings because we're in fucking pain, right? You don't sign up for a retreat or a training or develop a passion for anything really in the new age unless there is something fundamentally that you are potentially like running from or wanting to escape, or maybe if you have a more mature intention to at least develop an awareness and relationship with. But nonetheless, there is so much room for avoidance, and that's why you see people going to Peru to do ayahuasca and they leave an asshole and they come back a asshole. And I just am very again interested in keeping it simple. Like until your relationships are well, until you have nothing unsaid, in your lifescape, and to the people who matter to you, until you have reclaimed your energy from that which you are calling an enemy. Like there's no need to invest and spend money and read books and find gurus or whatever. And again, as somebody who's done that, and I'm not saying that it's bad. I'm just saying like, if you get right with you and you prioritize your relationship with you, you don't need anything else. And I absolutely resonate with, what you said earlier, which is like, when you change, right? Your perception, people around you 1000% change. I've seen that with my family who have not done 1 minute, of the kind of work we're talking about. I see it with my daughters. Like, you don't have to drag anyone to therapy, right? So I'm personally not a believer in couples therapy, for example. You don't have to drag your kids to specialists, right? Like, you just get right with you. And when you do that, and what do I mean by that? I mean, you take every single opportunity where you feel upset and you mine that for alchemical gold, right? You become a better vessel for your own inner landscape of emotions, and you become curious about what it is that you can learn about yourself through that which you are judging, blaming, and condemning. If you literally just do that, your entire life, your relationship to money, your relationship to your body, your relationship to the humans in your life, will transform, and you don't have to get anyone else to see your perspective. That to me is empowerment, right? Because the most vulnerable place that we can be, where we recruit all of our shadow defenses, is when we lie to ourselves about somebody else needing to understand what we know and get, somebody else needing to get on the same page before we can feel okay. And again, so I literally did this for a living. So like, I understand that impulse more deeply than most, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And over the years, like I have come to recruit fewer and fewer modalities, teachers, coaches. There was an intensive window for sure. And now I'm like, it's just all here. It's all here for me to work with, just moving through my life, seeing what pops into the movie of my life and, playing with that. I don't have to put any fancy words or dressings or concepts or recruit, any galactic councils to explain anything.
Yeah. I do believe in those. I'm way more woo than you are. Oh yeah, I'm out there.
Hey, whatever,
Hi.
yeah.
Whatever works for
fun.
you, it's fine. Yeah, no, it's all good. I just I feel like I had those intense experiences, like psychic experiences. Also, when I take care of other people, I do hypnosis and coaching. I do sometimes when there is a difficult part, I just open myself, and there's almost like a channeling that's coming through, and that helps create healing to the other person. I don't know where it's coming from. It's coming from, like, I don't know if it's different realm or guides or
You need to
angels
know? No.
or no, I don't need to know. I don't.
So it's like a reflex that we have, and I would consider it like a masculine reflex, even an immature masculine reflex, to have the theory of everything worked out, right? Like that you have a womb, right? Like that you have a channel to God, that you have an open source, to me is like baseline fact, right? And so how you open that, how you care for it, how you become like this custodian of that channel is really in your lived experience. And when we try to overlay all of these, and again, I am like literally the chief of this. So overlay all these explanations and like, validations, it's almost like it somehow takes away from it, right? Like,
No. There's no validation. It's all God. Absolutely. In different forms, shapes. And it's almost like when people go through a near death experience, someone will see Jesus, someone will see Moses. Depends on their set of beliefs. Sometimes our thinking mind needs to have those explanation so we can put things aside and die, just be open with our magical mind, to connect to source, to God, to whatever is making our heartbeat without us thinking about it, and channel and connect to this information as we are kind of like the cell within the universe, and the universe is also within us. It's pretty beautiful. So before we say goodbye for now, oh my goodness, I want to spend more time with you, but I want to respect your time too. What are your 3 quick tips to live in a stellar life, and where can people find you?
3 quick tips. I love quick tips because I'm really into activating the shift of a story, right? Like, and sometimes, like, I have this workshop called Calm Body, Clear Mind, and I'm happy to give the link. It's like a free workshop that I have, and it's all about these like quick tips that are lifestyle change related. Like change your breakfast. Here's what you can eat, and you'll feel different, like literally today. And I love that because it can ignite in you like a remembrance of the power that you've always had, So I would say, change your breakfast, let's say, is one. I would say another is to develop a different relationship as a woman to the way that you pee. I know, and I could go on and on about this, but suffice it to say, and I talk about this in my book, but suffice it to say that if you change your language about going to the bathroom, right? So like whenever I'm talking about when you're with somebody else, but also when you notice that you have to pee, right? So a lot of like pelvic floor people are not going to love this recommendation, but it's just a temporary practice where you literally honor every single time you have to pee and you don't make your body wait. Okay. And then when you're going to go, you don't say, I'll be back quick. I'm just going to go for 1 minute. Like you don't use any of that language that makes clear you're prioritizing somebody else's comfort and even connection over your own body's needs.
Okay, got it.
And then you go pee and you literally enjoy the experience, the readily available pleasure of going from having to pee to not having to pee. That's like an extremely pleasurable somatic experience. So in the simple reclamation of our body's biological impulses that were taken from us in our industrialized schooling, right, where we had to like literally raise our hand to go to the bathroom, ask permission, and sometimes be denied,
Yeah.
or that the co-option of our biology started in this programming, it's a huge reclamation, right? And I would say the third one is to begin the practice of entering through the upset. And you can begin the practice by just noticing when you're upset and noticing what your tendency is, right? To need to do what? Reach out to a friend, to need to send the email, to need to, go lie down in bed. Like, what is, to need to have a beer, to need to whatever. What is your tendency? Because the first thing is just to begin to notice some of these automated, reflexive, trauma-based responses. And then, the practices can come later. And then, you can find me. My handle is always Kelly Brogan, MD. And I have a book out called The Reclaimed Woman that is essentially the summary of my past 3 years of toil and trouble in the realm of feminine reclamation, and really a curation of the tools and the stages to orient women around where it is that they might be in the journey. And there's a companion program for that called Reclaimed.
Mhm.
And we just finished our first round of it. And it was all that I hoped and dreamed, because for me, growing this field of women who are taking responsibility for their lived experience of embodiment it creates a safer world for me, to live in. And so I really enjoy and derive great fulfillment from spreading the word.
Yes. Kelly, thank you so much for being the trailblazer that you are, for being fearless, for reclaiming your own femininity and your own power, and to kind of having other women do the same. It's so beautiful, and we need more than that. More than that in the world. Like more people like you. I love that. I appreciate you. Thank you for doing what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you for your
Yeah.
receptivity. I appreciate it so much.
Yeah. And thank you, listeners. Remember to change your breakfast, develop a different relationship to the way you pee, meaning respecting your body's needs, taking the time to just be with your body whenever she needs you or he needs you, whoever is listening to this very women centric podcast, and enter the upset, which is so good, especially in today's world where we just try to distract ourselves from pain by scrolling through social media or by just attacking. If you just enter the upset, you just take a moment with your body. If you just allow yourself to be okay with your shadow part, with your darkness, and love yourself whole and complete, light and dark, because you are perfect just the way you are. Whatever you do or didn't do, you are worthy of love, like Dr. DeMartini say. And every time something good happens, run to the mirror and say, I love you. When something bad happens, run to the mirror and say, I love you. I love you no matter what. That's from Louise Hay. I guess this was a lot about self-love and reclaiming that love for yourself and for your body, independently of what other people think. So thank you so much and have a stellar life. This is Orion. Till next time.